Hey guys, what is up? It is me, Pagey, here once again with another video on some DC, well, it's all DC movie, I think. Yes, DC movie news. So we are, of course, still in the midst of the two strikes going on in Hollywood amongst the writers and, of course, the Screen Actors Guild. And yeah, we did have Stephen Amell say something that rocked, well, mainly Twitter, but I guess some websites as well. And some people have asked me for my opinion on that, and I'll just let Jose Mourinho speak for me at this time.
I prefer really not to speak. If I speak, I am in big trouble. In big trouble. And I don't want to be in big trouble.
But anyway, due to the writers and actors strike, Comic-Con this year in San Diego was, well, a bit of a dud, if you want to put it honestly and just put it lightly. Well, if you're putting it lightly, you're putting it honestly, I guess, whatever. But it did allow some announcements that would normally just be footnotes and be, not that big of a deal in a normal year at San Diego Comic-Con, stand out this time around. One of these being the two animated DC films that were announced for next year, that of course being 2024. Now, we did do a video going over this when they were announced. However, James Gunn did recently give some added information and confirmation surrounding one of them, as there was some confusion around what it was or was not going to be. So the two animated movies that were announced were a Watchmen animated film, but then also a Crisis on Infinite Earths film, officially titled Justice League Crisis on Infinite Earths. And there was nothing said at the announcement that suggested that it was in James Gunn's universe or anything like that, but one thing that confused people was the fact that the Crisis movie was labeled as a DC Universe movie. Of course, this is what James Gunn's universe is being called, the DC Universe, or DC Universe, or the DCU effectively. So you can sort of understand the confusion around this, at least at a surface level. So when James was asked about this on Threads, which I'm surprised people are still using, but anyway, he said nope, as to whether the animated movies were connected to what he was doing, and that, quote, they messed up, and that now, quote, it's been corrected. This then led to the original announcements, original announcement posts for these two films on Twitter, or X, now being deleted. Can we stop changing names of things? It's so confusing. Twitter's now X, Threads is still crap. It's crazy. But just because James Gunn said that these two films of Watchmen and, more importantly, Crisis on Infinite Earths are not a part of his universe or story or end story, he did confirm that there will be animated films in his universe, just like how there are going to be animated TV series starting with Creature Commandos next year, which is like the first proper story and project within his DC universe. So in regards to what animated films he does have planned, I mean, it could be projects that are more risky due to the character's popularity, but also maybe would require like a bigger budget to make it live action. So they can still make that movie and include it in the universe and the story and allow things to push forward, but just make it animated. And I would assume most of the animated movies he would have in mind, I guess, would be for the theaters, like the cinema, to go sit down, pay a ticket, buy a popcorn, everything, and watch, and not for streaming or Blu-ray like the current animated films currently do. But then again, maybe he might go down that path and maybe make them for HBO Max or a Max movie, once again, another name change, but make it like a Max exclusive animated film. I'm not too sure what he's going to do. Like, the only animated film from DC that was a part of like the WB animation group that I actually remember being released in theaters lately, or like over the past handful of years, and going and seeing, was The Killing Joke. Maybe there were others, but that's the only one I remember knowing went to theaters like for a limited run that I also personally saw in theaters as well. I don't know, if you have any thoughts in regards to what a decent animated film project in James Gunn's DC universe would be that he would put out in theaters and have some faith in to make some money, let me know in the comments. I just don't know exactly what path he would go down. Maybe it'd have to be like something very weird or something like that, like a Detective Chimp or something like that. Maybe he might go down that route. But speaking of animated movies and just the James Gunn effect, if you want to put it, there was a bit of a reveal potentially for what James Gunn has planned, either as a project itself or an influence on stories throughout his upcoming DC universe, and this is around the Kingdom Come story. So a new animated film, Justice League Warworld, came out last week, I think it was, and the creative team behind it did do an interview at San Diego Comic-Con, obviously promoting it and talking about it, and amongst the various questions, something about Kingdom Come did come up, and one of the producers, Butch Lukic, hopefully I pronounced that correctly, gave a pretty eye-opening answer. So the question was, I love what you guys do with the DC animation and adapting some of these classic storylines. I know you talked about back backlash a little bit, but are there any other DC storylines that you guys want to adapt for animation? If I have one, I would love to see Kingdom Come. And this is what Butch had to say. We originally talked about Kingdom Come after this, but changing regimes, we couldn't go forward with anything like that. So this is a pretty interesting line. It did catch people's eyes on Twitter and make them go, ooh, what's happening here? Is this something that James Gunn is planning on his live action DC or his like new DC universe, story? Or is it something that's happening soon? Is it just, he doesn't want an animated thing happening and then like 4 years later him doing the story as well? He wants a bit of breathing room. What's happening here? Well, the overall story of Kingdom Come in the comics or in its graphic novel involves this new batch or age of superheroes coming to the forefront, but along with that comes this new set of morals and how they go about doing things, which takes things, I guess, down a pretty violent route in regards to how they deal with villains. And this then involves the superheroes from the past who are older and possibly retired, like a Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, stuff like that, reuniting as the Justice League to restore order, if you want to put it, and sort of strike a clear line between heroes and villains, because this new age of superheroes necessarily aren't, making a clear, distant opinion of what a hero and a villain is. They sort of blur the line a bit. And potentially what James Gunn is doing with Superman Legacy, for example, in his early movies is potentially a bit of a flip on this. So we do know that The Authority is going to be one of the films shortly releasing after Superman Legacy. We don't know if it's the movie after it or 3 or 4 movies after it, but it's in that first batch of films that James Gunn has planned. So maybe we pick up in this DC universe with your stock standard heroes of a Superman, Green Lantern, Guy Gardner, Hawkgirl, Mr. Terrific, Metamorpho. Of course, these are characters already announced to be part of the Superman Legacy film. But maybe they don't deal with villains and threats the way that the public or just people in power would want them to. They stop a villain. It's like, yay, they stop the villain. But then, like, let's say like they stop the Joker, for example. But then 2 days later, Joker is back on the streets of Gotham City, causing anarchy again and leading to more innocent people being impacted. People want these villains sort of taken care of for good. Not locked away, but, for good, aka hasta la vista, baby, okay? The chop of the head, chopping it off, aka let them die. So this could be the birth of the Authority in Superman Legacy, this more ruthless group of superheroes that will, cross that line and make sure these villains aren't villains anymore. And then this can stem off into their own film potentially. But then again, there is also the chance that we start Superman Legacy with the Authority and them being an issue, which causes Superman to take action and stop their way of crime fighting. So the Authority steps in to what the Kingdom Come story is, where they are this new age of superheroes, but then it causes Superman to not like what they're doing, and he takes action and, sets a moral compass, if you want to put it. But then that would mean that the Authority film would be a flashback, I guess, before the events of Superman Legacy. So it just makes you think that the Authority film builds off of Superman Legacy rather than preceding it. But you never know. There could be an interesting storytelling technique that James Gunn is planning around all this that does make it work differently, but also seamless at the same time, where it doesn't feel a bit jarring, jumping from one movie to the other. So it is a wait and see. I'm sure he has something planned. But yeah, not exactly sure how he's going to go about it. Now, whether or not this would actually lead into a Kingdom Come style film on its own, or the story of Kingdom Come being flipped, serving as like an introduction or entree of sorts for Gunn's take on the DC universe, that of course is just a wait and see across the board. But it is an interesting way to adapt it and just sort of make it feel, a bit fresh and not just a straight up adaptation. I've always felt like, with a comic book, if they're just going to straight up adapt it into a movie, just read the goddamn comic book, because usually that's always going to be the better form. Sometimes you need to have a bit of difference there. You can adapt the storyline, but add a bit of a twist there. But then with this, you also can be loyal to the source material at the same time, with having clear pillars between both story, the comic book story and the movie, having very mutual peers that hold the movie up. It's just what's around them is a bit different and is a bit more creative. And I mean, we're probably going to get more hints as to what's happening as we get closer to the movie actually filming. But of course, as I said at the beginning of the video, there are still these strikes going on that have to end for that to happen. So I can speak for most people when you say chop, chop, come on, chop, chop, studios and guilds, start negotiating, please, and come to a pretty reasonable end between both parties, because there's the way to go, and people are sort of sick of waiting. We need this stuff to start coming out, don't we? Now, the interesting thing with this is that, of course, James Gunn replied to this. So James Gunn is still active on social media. I'm sort of confused what his role is. Like, can he promote Blue Beetle or is he not allowed to? I'm not sure what's happening there. Because he did promote Blue Beetle a bit before the strike, but as soon as the strike happened, he hasn't done anything. But then again, that movie is still about, what, about pretty much around 2 weeks from coming out. So maybe he might be able to do something there. I'm just not too sure if he's allowed to promote it or not. It's a bit of a gray area. I'm sure he knows, or hopefully he knows, as to what he can and can't do. But that, yeah, hopefully that movie gets some promotion because it's struggling at the moment. But because of that, he's still able to reply to certain things, as we saw with this thing in regards to whether the Crisis movie is his universe or not. He just might not be able to talk about Superman Legacy, for example, but he can talk about stuff that isn't directly associated with him. And because he is the DC Studios president or co-president, Blue Beetle, I guess, falls under that. So that's why he can't talk about it. So yeah, it's a bit of a weird situation, but hopefully things turn out for the better in the weeks to come. But yeah, guys, thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, be awesome. You could drop a like and it shows support. Let me know in the comments section down below your various opinions on all the stuff we went over in this video. Always curious to read what you guys are thinking. And of course, if you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe. And I'll catch you guys later. Goodbye.